Hello friends, and welcome to another video. So in this video is part 2 of my dual channel amp video series, and this will be a while probably before I update again on this amplifier, and I'll tell you the reasons why. So there's 3 topics I want to discuss today. So I want to discuss the tube signatures, so which ones are impressing on the sound the most, which are least, and we see if we can draw some conclusions from that. But it's actually quite significant because the 801A is actually the dominant signature in the sound. Then I actually made a mistake in this amp, and it has to do with scheduling and how you build your system. So this amp, if you're considering a dual channel amp where you separate off the lows from the mids and highs, or you do even 3 channels, you should only do that at a certain point, and we'll talk about that. And then yeah, third is just general what the impressions are after having now lived with this amp for a week. So if you're interested in all these topics, stick around. If you're not, of course, yeah, do something else, or wait until next video. But this is what we're going to talk about. So first of all, the signature. Now this is what we have here is, of course, just to recap, we got a UX112 driving the 801A for the mids and the highs. Now the reason is my speakers actually consist of about 2 12-inch woofers and a compression driver for the mids and the highs. So this is from about 650 Hertz up, and those do 650 Hertz down. So it's a 2-channel thing, but the thing is, of course, these two together are about 99 decibels per watt efficient, and that one is about 108 decibels per watt efficient. So that setup actually allows us to just use DHTs for the mids and highs that drive the compression driver. And I'm using a high quality output transformer, a Hashimoto, for the output. So, and a Landau iron interstage, an LL1660 as interstage. Now that is absolutely the most transparent of all my amps in the highs. But I also must say that surprisingly, we'll talk about these signatures in a minute or so. But it's actually dominated by the 801A. That is the signature that comes through. This one, the UX112 is, or the 12A, is actually almost completely not audible, which is interesting because usually it's the driver. So, and for the lows, I'm using the Type 50, and I'm using an indirectly heated tube, which has high gain and very low plate resistance. So it is extremely gives an extremely dynamic sound. I'm used to it, and strangely enough, you wouldn't expect it maybe, but you can't hear here that it's an indirectly heated tube. Where if this was a single channel amp with these 2 tubes, which I done twice, had an amp built with these 2 combinations, both direct connected and interstage coupled, it sounds crude, and that's just because of that tube. It's very literal, very crude, yeah, pretty crude, but it is very useful tube, and because it's only doing 650 Hertz down, you just don't hear it. So, and I don't hear the signature of the 50, which is a slightly warmer sound. So within its range, it is very good, and because it's such a dynamic sound, it matches quite well. Because this is a transmitter tube, the 801A, the character, because of that element, dynamic stuff, and then the transmitting tube, the sound characters actually match quite well. So I was actually pretty surprised by the coherence of the sound. It can be improved, because, as I said, I think the 801A dominates the sound too much, and I just don't like it. Or perhaps I haven't implemented it well enough. But it's obvious to me that the implementation of the 2 driver tubes, which both use filament bias, yes, it's possible with an indirectly heated tube, that is perfectly implemented, and I can't really hear the characters of those tubes, which I know very well, both of them. So that's there. So yes, very dynamic bass, very good mid bass, you know. You're not longing for push-pull or something. It is actually very fast, very good. I think also because this is a 180 milliamps output transformer, it just does it just is very suited to its job. And similarly, because I roll off the using the bypass capacitor of the 801A, so only these two use cathode bias, I roll it off at 140 Hz at an extra 6 dBs. So that reduces the hum, but it also reduces the saturation in the core, because the deepest bass is actually not put to that tube. So the output transformer doesn't have to deal with the most energetic and bass-rich things. It's just relieved from that duty, and I think it performs extremely well because of that. And as I said, it's all iron, that channel, where the mid actually uses an AM core. So it's quite surprising actually how well it all works. So yes, let's talk about the wrong moment, because this is a 2-channel amp, and really what I did wrong here is because I haven't finalized my speaker yet, because the 2-channel actually allows you to tweak the whole setup and the materials to actually make sure that the two drivers that you have, or the drivers that you have in your speaker, are the most well matched. So you need to finalize your speakers first. So if you look at your building, please finish your speaker first, and once you got your speaker sorted out, say with a single channel amp, and you got the crossover sorted out and it's all optimized, then move to a dual channel amp. That is the only time I think that you should be worrying about that. And then later you can work at the source and improving that and so on. But there's so much. The amp to me is the most important component in your system, because it actually gets the source to and has your speakers functioning optimally. So there's the most synergy to be gotten with an amp. However, that is a tweaking process for which the speaker needs to be stable, and so what I've done is I still need to build my final speaker, and so for me it's actually the wrong time. So while the amp is probably more important in the overall sound in your speakers need to be ready before you start going dual channel. It is really an optimizing step that you could do later, and you know, go that way. So then let's talk about the last point, signatures. So interestingly, as I alluded to, the problem is that I find that the whole this tube is actually dominating the complete sound, which means I can't really hear something wrong with the low channel, and I'd say as the more you can push that crossover point down, so if you manage to do it, say between 300 and 500 Hertz, then it's actually perfect, because you have far more liberties. The low channel doesn't have to be of the same quality as the mid and highs, where our hearing is just far more sensitive to any disturbances, and you want that to be coherent. Now, one of the things I thought with signatures is that before, for example, the 300B, I really don't like how the bass, I think it is detached from the mids and the highs. So I had sort of thought that maybe I don't have to, by splitting it into channels, that you had a less dependence on having the right signature for a single tube that needs to do the whole spectrum and needs to get it right and according to your taste. But what I now found is that because this signature dominates and that one is almost completely non-audible, it is surprising because I'm not using it as a driver tube, which I had done before, but it has exactly the same signature as in the output stage as it normally had in the input stage. So I'm a bit miffed about the signature. I just don't like the signature of the 801A as a holistic feeling. I appreciate for what it does, because it's probably the most transparent tube I've ever heard. However, I don't like the tonal balance in that tube, and that is what dominates the whole. If I need to characterize the sound of this whole amp, it is doing that. So I need to replace it, maybe for example with a Type 47 or something. I can't hear that tube, which normally has an energy in the mids and a little bit warmish, just a touch. not as much as the 26, but it's quite powerful. So it is a very good driver, the UX112. But I can't hear it. It is just almost gone in a way. So it's very, and that for such a revealing tube, and then to imprint its character, I was quite taken aback by that. So that definitely needs to improve for going forward. I'm also even considering going push-pull maybe on the bass stage, even though it's not needed. I could do it because I just think if I manage to put the crossover point to 500 Hertz, I just don't think it's interesting that it's a push-pull, and that would simplify especially the power draw of the whole amp, the stability. So, but I'll have to decide on that. So those are the elements. So yes, it's technically one of my best amps. If I see in how well it does. Is it my most enjoyable amp ever? No, it isn't. Mostly due to that tube there, which is brilliant, but not to my taste. So my 264650 amp that led through the inspiration is still my most favorite amp until this point in time. It was the far most musically intelligent and most coherent and most emotionally impactful amp that I built. This one is not. And we'll have to see in the future what the exact causes is. Is it the tube signature, or is it also maybe the construction of a dual channel amp that maybe affects the coherence and emotional impact? I don't know yet, but we're gonna find out. However, my next thing will be about maybe some generic theory about different playback methodologies and styles that I'm gonna do a video on. And I'm gonna go build a horn, and I'm gonna build a new speaker. So that will be up next, and then this amp will be revisited once we're done with that. So that's the video for now. The conclusions after living with 1 week with this. If you have any questions that you want me to comment on, post them in the comments and I'll get back to you in a day or two. Yes, thank you for watching. Have a brilliant day, have a brilliant week, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Bye bye.